I stayed up until 10 p.m. watching some YouTube stuff on my laptop. To the right was a queue of clips waiting to start playing. I was watching a clip of one of my favorite basketball players, Larry Big Al Johnson. The clip showed a long-range throw at the last second. A clean throw. With his long blonde hair pulled back into a ponytail, he looked like a movie star. I've known Big L since college. He was a famous player on the team, and he had an apartment in my building. We saw each other quite often, especially in the off-season. When he turned pro, he was drafted by the Wizards, the team closest to my home in Virginia. 3 years ago, he retired from the NBA. He is now a game presenter for Wiz TV. I watched his videos because I indulged in some nostalgia. The next video had nothing to do with basketball. It was a news clip. In it, Big Al danced with a beautiful blonde. They were at a club in Miami. The dance was overtly sexual. The blonde was my wife. The clip was filmed that evening and has just been published. The headline read, "Big Al, Another Conquest." I watched to the end, about 3 minutes. The dance ended and Big Al and Lee, my wife, were captured in a passionate full-body kiss. I downloaded the clip. I picked up the phone and called Lee's cell phone. Doesn't answer. After checking the time on the clip, I saw that it was filmed about an hour earlier and had just been posted. Lee was supposed to be at a business meeting in Miami, a 4-day conference with several people from her advertising firm. One of these people was my good friend Bart Kovacs. I called him. He replied, "Hello, Bart. This is Lee Martin. That's my name, but I call myself Marty." I heard a pause, then, "Marty, how are you?" "Not very good, Bart. Do you even know where Lee is now?" "Man, this is crap. So, she's with Big L?" "Bart, I need information. She has taken over YouTube. In the morning, my children will see it, and so will everyone else in the world. I need to know if she is having sex with him, and has been having sex with him all this time. They stayed there for 3 days, and were due back tomorrow afternoon. They got hooked on Tuesday when we arrived. We checked in, and they got to know each other. Probably from college. She comes to meetings during the day, but he doesn't eat with us. Her roommate says she wasn't there for a single night. I'm guessing she's having sex with a guy. We all assume this. I'm so sorry, Marty. Me too. Will you see her in the morning? She has to catch a plane. I think I'll see. She comes to morning meetings, not breakfast. I think she might be at the hotel, just in some other room. Okay, tell her not to bother coming home. If she was even going to do it, he also lives here. I don't want to get into this with her. If she asks, I'll tell her. Fair. See you. Lee and I met in college when we were both in our 20s. We were in our penultimate year and were taking math classes. On the first day, I walked into class, looked around, and saw the most beautiful woman I had ever laid eyes on. She just sat and drew in her notebook. There were only 5 other students there, all boys. But she was sitting alone. I sat down at the desk next to her. She looked at me. "Well, I see someone was smart enough to take this place. I was already wondering if I smelled something funny." I looked at the other guys. They were all nerds, and, most likely, very shy. I wasn't a nerd, even though I was in a math class. My height is 1.73 meters, weight 68 kilograms, brown eyes, brown hair. I don't look too bad. The women seemed okay with me, if not taken aback. I used to be told that I have character. I answered, "You don't smell funny, although I have to move closer to really tell." They're all shy nerds. "Aren't you a botanist?" "I see. No, I'm Lee Moore." She extended her hand. We shook hands. "I'm Lee Martin. When we get married, you won't even have to change the monogram on your luggage and handkerchiefs." "How convenient," she smiled, and the teacher entered the room. After class, Lee and I walked together to the Student Union building. She was a green-eyed blonde, 6 feet tall, with an average figure, large breasts, and just the beautiful face of a girl from the next street. When she smiled at me, I was truly captivated. I said, "I bet you were surprised when none of the guys in class sat next to you. Because every guy would like to sit next to you." "Thank you." I was surprised. "Mostly I have to fight off guys. You took advantage of my insecurities, and now I really can't talk you out of it. I have another lesson in 20 minutes, but I'd like to invite you to dinner." Maybe tonight. Since we study in the same class, we should get to know each other better. No dinner, sorry. I have a permanent man and he won't like it. I had to try. Well, I hope to see you again. Me too. I like you. At least we'll see each other in class. We saw each other in class twice a week. The subject was difficult and I had to work hard. One day I asked her a question about some problem, and she explained everything to me. After class, I asked her if she had any problems with the course. No, I'm good at mathematics. And you? I need to take it for my chemistry major, but I spend a lot of time on it. Maybe you could give me some advice. What is this? A joke? I told you I have a boyfriend. No, I respect that. I just need help. We can sit in a diner and go over subjects as if you were my tutor. Fine. Diner at 4 in Laws. Agreed. During the meetings at the diner, I got to know Lee much better. She and I hit it off. We talked about many other things, not just mathematics. One day, a large guy approached our table, on which books were laid out. Lee looked up at him and smiled her killer smile. Marty, this is my boyfriend, Rashad. Rashad, this is Marty from my math class. I stood up and we shook hands. Rashad was a black man with a medium build, perhaps 5'8" tall and weighing 100 kilograms. He sat down next to Lee. We closed our math books, and Rashad wanted to know why I was taking this class with Lee and all those nerds. I need an upper-level mathematics course for my chemistry major. This will also help me in programming. The three of us then started discussing why some majors required outside courses that didn't seem to fit. The discussion was interesting. Rashad was a smart guy. I asked about his specialization. Physical training. I play hockey but want to teach high school unless I can make money from hockey. I could become a physical education teacher. Good plan. Better than mine. Chemists are actually hired, as well as programmers. I just don't know who exactly. What about you, Lee? I want to do business. I'm studying business. I like the idea of making money. As the semester went on, I saw more and more of Lee. I had an off-campus apartment, and one day I invited her and Rashad to dinner. He also invited his neighbor Stephanie, a high school graduate and simply a beauty. She and I had a friends with benefits type of relationship. Dinner went quite well. I made fish stew, spinach salad, and we ate cookies and ice cream. The women drank wine. Rashad and I our beer. Lee and Rashad left around midnight after we played some bridge. Surprisingly, all four of them liked the game. There was real competition, even though none of us had played as a pair before. Rashad and Stephanie were one team. Lee and I were another. It turned out that Lee was into some strange bidding systems, and I adopted it. Gradually, we pulled away and won. Stephanie stayed the night. She was attractive and passionate, but we both knew that being fuck buddies was all we were going to be. She had a boyfriend in her hometown. I never asked her what he thought of us. That evening was somewhat fateful because Lee asked me to play in a backup bridge tournament at the army base. I agreed. Meanwhile, Stephanie happened to have Rashad's phone number. She probably got it at the dinner, but unnoticed. I saw them together about 2 days after dinner. They walked across campus towards our building. I followed them for a short distance. They went inside. I followed them in. They were just entering the elevator. She lived on the 4th floor. The elevator stopped there. So what should I do? The bridge tournament was on Friday, 2 days later. I just went to my room and relaxed, near the window, reading and observing what is happening. About 2 hours later, he came out the front door. Rashad. I quickly walked to Stephanie's door and knocked. She shouted something and didn't open it right away. She looked flushed and was wearing flip-flops and a tight dress, no bra. Hi, Steph. Don't need a company? Not now, Marty. Oh, damn, Marty. You saw it all. The way you came here, you've seen. Yeah. Well, did you have fun? Maybe it's mean on Shad's part. I would feel awkward about it, but I don't feel awkward now. I feel great. Sorry. Don't worry, I'm thinking about what to do in this situation. I just hope you don't ruin the relationship between Lee and Rashad. He's just fun for me. Just like you. Well, not even as much as you. If you were in Lee's situation, would you want to know that Shad did something wrong? Yes, me too. The bridge tournament was a lot of fun. The Army team was very good at cards, but Lee and I took third place out of 20 on our side. Not bad. She said we got points, whatever that means. As we walked to my car, she asked me, "Why didn't you tell me about Shad and Steph?" He did not decide. How did you know? Steph told Rashad that you know everything. Then he initiated a discussion about it. Sorry, curiosity took over, and I saw them. What happened during the conversation? We decided to cool relations for a few weeks. Let's see how we feel. Oh, okay. Marty, I want you to take me to your place. If you want, of course. Oh, I want to. I drove, perhaps not as carefully as usual, toward the building. I parked and we quickly walked into the apartment. When the door was closed, Lee kissed me passionately. A slow, hot kiss. She moved her body back and forth against mine. I pressed my excited manhood into her stomach. She pulled away, grabbed me, and pulled me into the bedroom. I tore off my shirt and pants, including my underwear. Lee was already without a dress, without sandals, only in panties. I knelt down and slowly pulled them down and took them off. Sex with Lee was amazing. I brought her to climax twice, and the third time she reached the finish line with me. Oh God, Marty. Oh my God, I believed her. I always thought that she and I were right for each other. The size of my manhood in pants is not very large, just average, well, maybe a little larger than I would expect for my size. I was thinking about how to satisfy a woman, and I had some success, including this night. Lee rested for a while and then began to excite my manhood. Very sensitive. I answered her the same. It worked very well. She reached a strong climax. I immediately followed her. We lay there for 20 minutes, gently caressing each other. I stood up to empty my bladder. She followed me. Shower? She asked in a sexy voice. We took a long shower where I pressed her against the smooth wall and had her. Then we washed ourselves. We returned to bed and fell asleep. In the morning, I got up and brushed my teeth. Lee came in just as I was finishing. I gave her a spare toothbrush. After we got rid of my morning breath, we took care of my morning excitement. At breakfast, Lee asked, "Am I as good as Stephanie? Am I as good as Shed?" We stared at each other, then she grinned. "He's bigger, but you're better. Steph is very good, but you're fantastic." From that day, we were with each other. Lee practically moved in with me. Rashad was against it, but he couldn't do anything. Either way, it didn't take him long to find the other main one. He also visited Stephanie often. During his senior year, Big Al moved into this building and also lived on the 4th floor. Sometimes I saw him with Stephanie. He didn't move in with her, but they were often seen coming and going together. We said hi and bye, until one day Steph invited us over for dessert. Big Al was there too. We had a pleasant evening. I thought Big Al was polite and smart, and perhaps a little too considerate of Lee. Perhaps Steph felt the same way since we were no longer invited. Lee and I got married at age 20, right out of college. I got a job in the government, in the Pentagon, as a programmer. Lee found a job at a public relations firm. She mainly did advertising for companies. Advertising was supposed to influence the government, senators, congressmen, and agency representatives. I inherited a house from my grandfather, not far from work. It was rented out and the lease had expired. We moved into it. The house had 3 bedrooms, a large kitchen, a garage converted into living space, and a finished basement. That's what needed to be worked on. I did this job with the help of one of my high school friends who had a construction business in Virginia. Lee became pregnant, and at age 22, we had twin daughters, Betsy and Linda. They're not identical, but they're just a pain in the ass. Lee took a year off, and I cut back on my work to give the twins the attention they needed. At the end of that year, I switched to contractor status, which meant I could work from home. Lee returned to work part-time. When the girls turned 4, she went full-time. By that time, I had established a daily routine with them, and work as a contractor was going very well. I made more money, but without benefits. Lee's work became increasingly intense, largely because she allowed it to. She had driven and achieved a lot. My work depended more on creativity. Some of this work went to the government. But something was directly for me. I had two new ideas for systems that I thought could be profitable. I've been fiddling with them for quite some time. Lee made good money. At the age of 13, the girls entered primary school. I was 35 and in good shape. I ran and played table tennis. I know, doesn't sound too onerous. Try it yourself sometime, against good players. Before I saw Lee on video with Big L, I would have said that our sex life was very enjoyable, at least for me. On the other hand, we have been together for 15 years. I didn't think we were stale, but I think Lee believed it. I looked up where Big Al lived, about 3 miles north of us. I was wondering if what I saw in Miami was something new, or if it had been going on for a long time. I also asked myself some other questions. I asked the girls to do a DNA smear, and I did it myself. This was the day after I informed them about the YouTube video. I felt I had to do this to protect them from being ambushed at school. It was Friday and they had to go to school. They had tests and group classes. At 10, Lee called. I saw it was her and let it go to voicemail. Marty, pick up the phone, Marty, please. Marty, I love you. I made a mistake. I'll be back this afternoon. Oh, damn. You could hear her sobbing. One of the improvements I made to the house was an electronic entry system. I changed the code. The converted garage lay idle. It was furnished. I carried Lee's clothes and other necessary things there. I just put everything there. My mother called, and so did Lee's mother. Everyone wanted to know what I would do. I didn't know, and I told them so. I opened Lee's Gmail account and scrolled through a month's worth of emails, old and new. I checked the trash can. No contact with Big L. There were a few emails about work and a conference. 1 or 2 gave some kind of tip, but only from a guy from her work who was also going to Miami. Lee's plane was scheduled to land at noon. I didn't answer any of her calls. I asked to go to a friend's airport to keep an eye on who was getting off the plane and the whole situation. He saw Lee go out with her work contingent. She looked around. He was filming a video on his phone and went to get her luggage. He remained at the exit. 5 minutes after the rest of the people had disembarked, Big Lee came out. He also looked around and went towards the baggage claim. My friend followed him. Lee held her suitcase and looked around. She saw Big L, turned and left. Big Al took his suitcase and went outside. Lee was waiting for a taxi. Big Al walked up to her and spoke. She shook her head, refusing. A taxi arrived and the dispatcher put them both in it. My friend sent me a video. 20 minutes later, the taxi arrived at the house. There was only Lee in it. She was rushing around when she discovered that her code didn't work. She knocked and rang the bell. I opened the door. She burst into tears. I'm so sorry, Marty. I just never could have imagined what a mess it was. You don't live here, Lee. Your shit is in the garage until you find a place for yourself. Maybe you'd better go to Elle's house. Oh, Marty, I have nothing with him. I love you. You openly cuckolded me. Made me a laughingstock. Girls at school. God knows what they're going through. You are an evil bitch. Get out of my sight. Her face fell. Staggering. She walked away. She sat down on a chair on the lawn and cried. Our neighbor, Mrs. Cunningham, came out into the street, came over, and they talked. Lee went to her house. I called Lee's mother and told her that Lee was in the neighborhood and could use some support. Ellen, her mother, was not very responsive, but she said she would be there in an hour. I sat down in the kitchen and drank coffee. I tried to imagine what could happen now. Nothing worked for me the night before. I called an attorney I knew and was referred to, family law, attorney Joan Ellis. I called Ms. Ellis's office and made an appointment for the following Monday. Ms. Ellis called me back about 30 minutes later. Mr. Martin, this is Joan Ellis. You have made an appointment for Monday. Calling because of your wife and basketball player? Yes. How did you find out? The video doesn't say who she is. Who she is, the TV reporter found out. Big Al is the news here, especially the gossip. I thought there was no point in putting it off until Monday. Can you come tomorrow morning, say at 10? Yes, at 10. Please write for me a brief history of your relationship with your wife and with Mr. Johnson, if you know him. I will also need financial statements if you have them. We finished our short conversation, and she warned me against rash actions. When I hung up, the phone rang again. I answered automatically. It was Big Al. Marty, I called to try to apologize to you. Fuck you. I will bend over backwards to ruin your life as much as possible. Jerk. Wow, it's not just me. Not only me, but her too. It just happened that way. I was happily married to her before she left for Miami. We have 2 kids. You're a fucking asshole. If you see me coming, run. I said it, not shouted it. There wasn't even much of an accent. Everything was lifeless. There was a long hesitation on the other side, and he hung up. But now I had his number. I went into our phone account, our shared cell phones, and clicked on Lee's call output, checking L's number. I only saw him after she arrived in Miami. Moreover, twice. I did not have access to today's calls. I assumed that their meeting in Miami was accidental and not planned. I checked the Wiz schedule. They played an afternoon game in Miami on Wednesday. Big Al was the MC for the game, so he was in Miami on business. The doorbell rang. I looked out. These were my parents and my father-in-law and mother-in-law. Lee was gone. I let them in and offered them drinks, but they all refused and sat down. I stood at the entrance to the living room and asked, "Well?" My mom, Lacey, responded, "We had a small meeting on the street. We decided to find out what you think." I think, I sobbed, quietly but noticeably, and straightened up, looking at my mother. I guess at that point she gave up. Later, she said that in that look of mine there was so much devastation and melancholy, so much pain that she could not understand how something could be fixed. My dad asked, "Is there any chance you could talk to Lee?" She asked when we were there. For what? She won't be able to say anything. She destroyed our family, and it wasn't just one night. 3. She didn't really hide from her colleagues, and now the whole world knows about it. Ellen intervened. "I know she made a mistake, Marty. Big mistake, and he understands this. But you have girls, and you have loved each other for many years. You can save a lot, if you can. I don't consider her my wife, and I will never think of her as my wife again. She is the mother of my children, and that's all." Ellen said, "You're in pain now. Your ego took a big hit. You need to get over it. Your marriage cannot end because of just a few days. Ellen, I admire and love you, but your daughter has done irreparable damage. Please don't make any more attempts at reconciliation. No chance." She raised her hands and I continued. "You all should think about how life will turn out after the divorce, or when the divorce is formalized." My mother burst into tears. "Just wait a few days, Marty. Just a few. Your dad and I can take the kids for the weekend. Let's take them to the lake." I agreed, and just at that time, the girls were taken off the bus. They ran to the door, but the code was changed, and they had to knock. They were surprised that their grandparents were there. They wanted to tell me how my studies went. It wasn't all that bad. Betsy was good friends with Sharon Davis, and Sharon asked her about the video. Betsy said she hadn't seen him, but knew about him. Sharon wanted to know if her parents were going to get a divorce. Betsy didn't know. Linda didn't know. And I knew. I told them, "We'll figure this out later." They weren't too emotional. Linda asked where her mother was. Ellen replied, "Next door. Your grandparents want to talk to your dad. But I think you girls should pack your things for the weekend because we'll have you over. We'll take you to the lake." They were worried, but wanted to see Lee. We sent them packing. I was against them going to Lee. The 4 others thought it was necessary. I told them Lee could see the girls on the porch. Once they had packed their things, Ellen went to get Lee. Their suitcases were packed into the car, and they waited on the porch with their grandparents. Lee and Ellen came up. The girls didn't run to her, they just waited. My bedroom window on the 2nd floor was open and I could see and hear everything. Lee knelt down in front of the girls and all 3 hugged. "Mom," Linda asked, "what have you done?" How could she have sex with this guy? The last one was said with a sob. "I just made a very bad mistake. I have to try to understand why, but I still love you girls and your dad very much." Betsy was not impressed. She was the tougher of the 2. "If you loved Dad, you wouldn't be able to do this. You put it all on video. How could you do this?" Now she was crying. Lee began to cry. I am so sorry. It's a pity. It was a bad mistake. Lee hugged Linda, and Betsy pushed her away. Lee stood up and ran to her father's car. My parents put the girls in their van. Everyone went in different directions. I just sat on my bed, stunned and saddened. Then he got very, very angry. Anger seethed inside me. Nali, on Larry. I was thrashing around and screaming, and then I went down to the basement and started hitting the bag that was hanging there. Every blow was aimed at Larry or Lee. When I was exhausted, my hands were red and bleeding. I decided that they both should suffer, no matter what. I did my best to heal the damage on my hands, then took a nightcap and went to bed. It took me a while to fall asleep, but I finally did. This morning I went for a long run. Very fast and long. Then he collected his financial materials and went to the lawyer's office. Joan Ellis turned out to be a woman in her 40s, slender, with dark hair and eyes, dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt. We shook hands. I'm a little underdressed, sorry. Today is Saturday, and I did some work in the yard. No problem. You look great. She smiled. Let's go to the conference room. And she led me along. I started, Miss Ellis, I would like to make it clear what my options are regarding divorcing my wife. I can tell you about it. But are you sure you want a divorce? This is a hard path. You have 2 children, right? Yes, the twins are 13 years old, and I would like to get custody. Let's get back to the question of whether you want to end your marriage. Has a story like the one in Miami ever happened before, or is this an isolated incident? I don't think she's been out before, but I don't know for sure. So, if it's true, you can't come to terms with it? No, I said quickly without adding anything. Fine, then let's discuss finances. We discussed who earns how much and who does what for the children. Joan was pleased to learn that the house belonged to me and had belonged to me before marriage. The children lived there all their lives. She also felt that our work schedules, as well as the fact that I am a stay-at-home parent, would work in my favor when deciding custody. However, she emphasized that nothing can be said for sure. I made about the same amount as Lee, but the income was not as stable. Joan believed that neither of us would be required to pay child support. The non-custodial parent will be required to pay child support. I was wondering how quickly we could start the divorce proceedings. Maybe a week to prepare the documents and submit them. I think you should wait longer. People change their minds, and most likely, you will be ordered to undergo a consultation. Oh, can this be avoided? I wouldn't want to ever talk to her one-on-one. You will have to have these conversations. Maybe we can keep them to a minimum. I noticed that your hands are bandaged. Why? I was a little angry last night, so I took it out in a heavy bag. Forgot to put on gloves. Well, at least you didn't visit Mr. Johnson. Or your wife. Speaking of which, is there a way to sue him for this? He must pay. In this state, there is currently no way to sue for adultery or alienation of affection. It used to be, now it doesn't. I also looked up Florida law. There is no such possibility there either. He must pay. Now my voice has become even. This seemed to frighten Joan. Let me see what I can do. Just no violence, please. No promises. The guy has to pay. I won't be able to sleep if he comes out of this without consequences. Mr. Martin, I must tell you that although what you tell me as your lawyer is confidential, if I know in advance that you are about to commit a violent crime, I may have to report it. Or not. Joan, you will never have such knowledge. Thanks for saying that. I signed an agreement with her and paid the fee, telling her to have the documents ready as soon as possible. When I got home, it was already noon, and when I walked in, my father, Leland, called. Hello, how are you doing today? Fine. I just came from a lawyer. Oh, hurry up. And what did he say? She and I discussed what would happen in the event of a divorce. Marty, you need to hold off on this. Do not rush. The decision is really important, and you shouldn't make it in a hurry. Dab, as soon as Lee let that bastard fuck Hare, she was history. The fact that she did it over and over again makes it even worse. But once, is enough. Your mother thinks she hurt you so much that there is no hope. I think she might be right. But still, I want you to slow down. At least once, Lee should have a chance to explain everything. What do you think she could say that would make me change my mind? There was no answer for some time, and then, okay, I can't think of anything. Which is what needs to be proven. We discussed the girls' moods and their emotions. Linda was very sad and moping. Betsy was angry and had difficulty controlling herself. Mom works with both of them, tells them that they are not losing their parents, that they will always have both parents. We took our leave. The home phone rang. He doesn't have a caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. It was Lee. Marty, if you are here, please pick up the phone. I need to talk to you. Marty, I need this. Please. I screwed up and I know it. You're the only one I know that I can talk to about anything serious. And will I lose you? No, please. I know how angry you must be. Confused. I'm really sorry. There was a lot of sobbing and she hung up. While she was saying this, I cried. And then he went down again. This time I wore gloves. It still hurt, and I hit and kicked the bag until I was exhausted. I went upstairs and took a shower. I think some guys get drunk in these situations, but I use a bag or run. I decided to think about how to fuck Larry. I have one thing that keeps coming to my mind. The gun that was found. I have owned 2 registered pistols, a .45 caliber revolver and a .40 caliber S&W pistol. But one day while jogging, I saw a sparkle in the tall grass. It turned out to be a Taurus self-loading pistol, .380. I took it for myself. It was charged and working. I cleaned it, and as I did so, I noticed that the serial number had been erased, which meant the gun was illegal. And still I kept it. One day I took him to the shooting range, and he seemed to shoot accurately. I kept thinking about how I could shoot Larry with it. But I had girls, and I would never want to end up behind bars, especially because of this asshole. I pushed these thoughts aside. I felt that now was not the time for Lee and I to talk. I knew that sooner or later we would have to talk face to face, but now the thought of meeting her made me almost feel ill. I was sitting in the house alone. A feeling of deep despair came over me. It was as if they had thrown a heavy blanket over me, pinning me to the sofa. It was difficult to breathe. Suddenly fear gripped me, and I quickly jumped up from the sofa. If someone had seen me then, they most likely would have decided that I was completely crazy. I knew I had to move and went for a brisk walk. She led me to Larry's house. I didn't linger there, but noted that there seemed to be very little security there. The house was large, new, close to the street. There is a basketball hoop in the driveway. There is no car, but there is a large garage behind. I walked past it, made a loop, and walked past it again, taking a few photos with my phone. Next, I walked past Lee's parents' house, further north. Their cars were parked at the entrance. Lee's car was still in my garage. I hurried on, went into the store, and bought a prepaid cell phone and a Diet Pepsi. Eventually, he returned to his home. It was 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. I went into the house and made myself a sandwich, but I probably ate 3 slices. As soon as I stopped moving, the feeling of suffering came over me again. I took out the .380 and drove out of town, where my friend has a couple of hectares of land with an open shooting range. There is no one there. He and his family are in Florida. I shot 2 boxes of cartridges from the pistol. The gun is inexpensive but functional, and is a little heavier than a good gun would be. On the way home, I stopped at the pharmacy and bought 2 neoprene thigh wraps. Returning home, I constructed a body bandage that held the .380 caliber in the lumbar region. I tried running with it and everything was fine. My cell phone was off all day and I didn't respond to emails. I turned it on. There were 11 voicemails, 20 or so text messages from family, colleagues, and friends, and numerous emails. The voicemails were from Lee, Ellen, and my mom. They all said pretty much the same thing. Please contact us, we need to talk. The text messages were very similar. Some of them were from my father, and 2 were from Lee's father, Milt, one just a few minutes ago. The messages from Milt were not like the others. In the first, he apologized for Lee's actions and for failing to raise a responsible daughter. In the second, he asked if I wanted to talk to him away from women. I called him and the call went to voicemail. I didn't leave any message, but 3 minutes later he called back. "Marty, I needed to go for a walk to free myself." "What's happened?" "I saw you wanted to talk, Milt. Can we meet somewhere?" "How about Raymond Park, near the Hops Court?" "Okay. In about 30 minutes?" "It'll do." I put on my jeans and put the 380 in my pocket in case I saw Larry, who lived a half-mile from that park. I drove for about 10 minutes, just walking past Larry's house. I was in the park early, as was Milt. It's a small park, and there aren't many people there. We shook hands and sat down on a bench to the side of the court. Milt said, "I wanted to make sure you were okay. From what Ellen and your mom said, I was worried." "I'm not okay, Milt. I feel like worse than ever before. That's how I feel." "Well, I can remember how my mother died. It took me a year to get back to normal. I just kept working, day after day. This is what you should do too. Yes, it's easy to say, but damn hard to do. And only one day passed. If it makes you feel any better, Lee is almost catatonic. She hasn't eaten since she came to our house, and she probably said 3 sentences. We are thinking about calling her for help. Actually, you look a lot better than her. This is probably due to guilt. She has it, but you don't. I'm sorry to hear that, Milt. Because the twins will need her, need their mother. I don't understand why she is so amazed, because she did everything openly. Did you really think that no one would know? That I wouldn't know? I cannot believe it. Sooner or later, even without YouTube, one of her employees, some of them my friends, would have caught wind of it. I don't think she was thinking straight at all. I think she may have suddenly found herself in a strange situation, away from her family, and being stalked by a celebrity. So I succumbed to feelings that in a normal situation, I would have suppressed. Here's what I can take away from it. You're so smart, Milt. But I think she had a thing for Larry since college and thought she could have her cake. And what are you going to do? It's very, very likely that I will divorce her. Now I can't even think about her without anger and hostility. I hope I don't get sick because of all this. Look, I know everyone else is telling you to wait to decide something. Am I? I just can't understand how you can go back to any semblance of a family life with her. Yes, the case is lost. I'm going to wait, but not for long. You need to prepare her if she is as bad as you say. I'll try. And we parted. I was walking back to my car parked on a nearby street when Larry dribbled a basketball up the intersecting street toward the court. I saw him and reached for my gun. Milt, driving towards him, saw him and pressed the horn. Larry got scared and lost the ball as it rolled down the street. He jumped after him without looking. An idiot. It wasn't Milt who hit him. A car traveling in the other direction, perhaps a little fast, was blocked by Milt's car, and he was hit by another car, some kind of SUV, before the driver could brake. Larry went over the hood and windshield, flew into the air, and fell onto the street. Milt continued driving. I ran up to Larry. At the moment he was alive and conscious. I looked at him. The SUV driver ran up. He shouted that he had already called 911. We were not far from the hospital, about 4 blocks. Larry recognized me. He tried to say something, but nothing came out. I watched it slowly fade away. Paramedics arrived about 2 minutes later. They worked as hard as they could, but to no avail, and Big L was gone, and I felt betrayed. The police arrived. I was a little nervous because even though I had a concealed carry permit, the gun was illegal. But I answered the questions, gave my name and address, and was released without objection. The driver of the SUV, an elderly man, was upset. I told him and the police that there was nothing he could do. Larry simply rushed after the rolling ball, at the wrong moment. About an hour later, I drove home, threw out the 380 and drove to Milt's house. I knew Lee was there, but I needed to discuss a fatal traffic accident with Milt. I drove up to the house and rang the bell. Ellen opened it. She saw that I was in an emotionally charged state, and I was really in an emotional state, in euphoria. Well, at least in great joy. I knew that I had probably avoided being killed, pure luck, but I had to see Milt. I turned to Ellen. "Is Milt here? I need to discuss something with him." She turned and shouted, "Milt, don't you want to see Lee?" "No, too early." "Milt." Milt went downstairs. I waved to him and we left. "Milt, Big Al is dead." "Damn, did you kill him?" "I saw you had a gun. God, Marty. But he didn't look the way he should have if he was truly upset." "I didn't kill him. He got hit by a car after you honked at him. He missed his basketball and ran outside after it like a child. I saw him die." I couldn't help myself and smiled. Marty said, "It's clear. Accident. God works in mysterious ways. I'll leave it to you or Ellen to tell Lee that her boyfriend died." "He's not her boyfriend, but we'll let her know. I guess it'll be all over the news." "Certainly. How is she?" "Also, not good. On the contrary, you look upbeat. I even felt deceived when he died. But then I saw this as a saving grace. Marty, I want to save my daughter. I think she's heading into the abyss. I know she screwed up, but I love her and I want her to have a life. Therefore, I ask you, if you see a way, at least do not interfere. Maybe later you can lend a helping hand. It's a difficult request, but I ask. Milt, I have to think about this. If we talk to her too soon, I won't be able to help. You have to keep her away from me. Let me think it over. I'll try to find a way out. Congratulations on escaping murder." We laughed and returned to the house. I left by car. That night I slept. The girls called me and we had a good talk. Then I just went to bed. On Sunday, I became depressed again. It was a nice day, and I had nothing better to do than think about the state of my marriage. No matter what Milt said, I knew Lee and I could never be together again. This made me sad, but it is true. I did another long run, walked down to the shopping center, along the river, and returned home. I showered and went to see my parents and kids for a Sunday picnic. The twins were in a better mood. They had a conference call with Lee, who must have perked up because she was encouraging them. I've wondered this. Mom said there was no mention of Big Al, Lee's infidelity, or Larry's death. Only talk about school. Lee told the girls she would see them as soon as she got better. I had a good time with my parents and girls. While they were in the pool, I told my parents that I saw Big Al get hit and die. They were shocked. My father said, "You didn't have anything, you know." "No, it's a coincidence. I was in that park with Milt, talking. He just drove off and Larry got hit. He rushed outside to get his ball." "Fine. Well, I can't say I'm sorry. May the Lord have mercy on his soul." We changed the subject. Joan Ellis called me on Monday. First, I wanted to know how I felt about Larry's death. She didn't know I was there. My name was not published. I told her the whole story and she was amazed, maybe a little suspicious. I know that if I were her, I would be suspicious too. She then said that the documents would be ready on Wednesday and asked me to let me know when I wanted them to be served. I told her to wait a little because Lee was in bad shape. I made a promise of sorts to Milt. The kids decided to go to school even though Big Al's death and his outburst the week before was big news. I was left alone and decided to work, working half a day for the army. For 2 or 3 hours, I went about my business. Then I picked up the girls from school after their extra classes. We ate pizza. It was something I could make myself, and they loved my pizza. We had a good evening, but they both asked before going to bed whether their mother would be back. I answered this question honestly. I don't think we will have the same agreements as before. I can't say what the future will bring, but I don't see us going back to the way things were. Something else awaits us. But we both will always love you both. Milt called on Tuesday. Ellen also called. They wanted to meet. I said I would come to Starbucks. As we grabbed our drinks, Milt said he had contacted a marriage counselor and asked me to get involved with Lee. Ellen said that if we divorce on the grounds of adultery, the court will most likely still order counseling. Okay, I said. But I won't lie. If we really get into this and go deeper, I still don't see it helping her. Ellen said, we are not asking you to lie. Just move slowly, listen to the psychologist, talk to Lee. Otherwise, I think she will have big problems. Big Al's accident seemed to scare her. We didn't tell her you were there. The first session was scheduled for the following Monday at 10 in the morning. I arrived promptly at 10, not wanting to wait in the same room as Lee. The consultant was Sylvia Price, a psychologist and certified marriage and family counselor. This is a woman of about 50, slightly plump, but pleasant. She led us into her office. Until this moment, Lee and I had not spoken. She looked unwell, was pale, and constantly rubbed her hands. Dr. Price informed us of the nature of her practice, which includes working with cases of adultery. She asked me what my goal was in counseling. I would like to move forward in life. I hope to remain a good father to my children, but I do not believe that reconciliation in marriage is possible. Lee, your goals. I want my old life back. It may not happen, but I would like to remain Marty's wife, even if things don't have to be the same. Dr. Price looked at each of us. As I understand the situation, Lee went to Miami for a work conference, where she met a man she knew from university, and they spent several nights together. The man was well known, and the two were publicly linked. Is that why we are here? Lee said. Yes. I didn't believe that. My relationship in Miami would become public knowledge. I thought it would only be for the time I was away from my family. Dr. Price asked, if that's true, why did you go dancing with Mr. Johnson? You must have known that he was a famous person. I thought it would be fun. It was not near the hotel. Actually, it was fun. But you knew that your colleagues would find out about your relationship and, of course, you understood that Marty would soon find out about it. Perhaps not as quickly as he did in reality. Let's leave that aside for now. Fine. Marty, could you explain why you are so sure that the marriage is over? I looked straight at Lee, because Lee was the only person in this world that I loved and trusted the most. So when I saw that she was ready to betray me so easily and openly, I was devastated. My grandparents died in an accident. I felt bad and in pain for a long time. But that doesn't compare to this. Nothing. I would never, ever put myself in a position to be crushed like that. If Lee could do this to me, then anyone could do it. I could never give her, or anyone, that kind of power again. Lee was openly sobbing as I said this. I wanted to say that I would never trust her. How do you feel seeing her in this state? I'm just sad, and also very angry. It was so blatantly cruel to me, and to our children too. Even if it was done out of stupidity, without the desire to cause pain, it was so bad. And for what? 3 nights with some stud you wanted in college? I looked straight at her when I asked this. Lee sobbed. No, I don't know why I did it. Dr. Price said, calm down, Lee. Is it true that you had sexual feelings for Mr. Johnson when you were in college? Yes. He was a big, handsome, and famous guy. He then pestered me. But I was with Marty, and I said no. I asked, then why did you say yes in Miami? For several months leading up to this, I felt a little out of touch. We've all been so busy. I was excited to spend a few days in Miami and thought it might rejuvenate me. But as soon as I got there, I saw Larry. He hugged me tightly, and I realized that I would not push him away if he wanted me. Everything was so fast. I can't understand it. I said, we had great sex the night before you left, didn't we? Or were you pretending? No, it was all for real. It made me tingle the entire flight. Crap, I feel so bad. Lee was crying again. My tears flowed too, but my boiling anger also returned. I didn't believe I could hold him back, so I got up and went to the outer office. I was about to hit the furniture when Dr. Price came out. Why don't you go down to the men's room for a minute? I can talk to Lee alone. Then I can talk privately with you. That's exactly what I did. The two of them spent about 15 minutes together. Lee came out, no longer crying. Sorry, Marty. On that note, she left. Dr. Price asked me, "Marty, how do you feel about Mr. Johnson's death?" You know, I was there and saw him die, and I was happy that he died. I could have killed him myself, but he was shot down first. I think it's ugly, but it's true. And now? The same thing, maybe even worse. This guy ruined my whole life because of some bullshit. I felt cheated that I couldn't kill him. Why does Lee's adventure with Larry mean the destruction of your entire life? I was a family man, nothing more. What I said about betrayal, I will never get over it. I can't imagine meeting anyone I can trust. Lee just broke it. But only a few days have passed. Let me ask you, have you thought about how good the sex was between Lee and Larry? Yes. I saw on YouTube that they absolutely lusted after each other. And how did you feel about it? Betrayal. This was the worst possible betrayal. Lee, no matter what happens, she will always be able to remember her fantastic sex-soaked affair. If we had stayed married, I would have always believed that she was thinking about him while we had sex. You know, I want to destroy this memory for her, and I fully intend to do so. This is the least I can do. Tough position. This is a woman you deeply love. In the past, I really loved her deeply, which is why it hurts me so much. She gutted me. This ended the session. She asked me to think about what living arrangements could be made if we separated. History Lee. I was given the task of presenting the facts about Miami and why I was so weak. I also outlined how reconciliation could happen between Marty and me. Before going to Miami, I felt out of place, not enjoying the things I used to love. Work has become a routine. Family life was also routine. This has been going on for several months now. I had a vague feeling of stagnation. I was looking forward to going to Miami. One guy at work, Brady Bean, has been harassing me ever since he transferred to our office. I easily pushed him away for months, treating him like a buffoon. This did not discourage him. He was not Adonis, but he was good-looking and had a cheerful disposition. I was not offended when he continued to pursue me. When we realized that we would both go to Miami, he began to play on this as an opportunity to sleep without any reproaches. I let him know that I was not interested, but I knew that I would not leave him indifferent and was flattered. I thought about his scenario, but I would never have sex with him. Too risky, even if he were super attractive, which he wasn't. But at our hotel when we were checking in, Larry appeared. He was definitely super attractive. He hugged me, quite energetically, and I was immediately taken aback. I realized that he could get me in Miami if he went for it. He also understood this because he immediately went for it. He took me by the hand, took me aside for a minute, and asked if Marty was with me. When I said no, he said he had a hotel room and would be there until Friday. He just said that he wants me and knows that I want him. I agreed to go to dinner with him. I can't fully explain why I became such an easy target. A slut. Marty and I had great sex the night before. I was still on edge, and so was Larry. It's not close to home free passage, I thought. I never once thought about Marty and what might happen if he found out I cheated. At least I can't remember thinking about it, but I should have. If I had met Larry in Virginia, I'm sure I could have turned him down. But I told myself that for a few days I found myself in another world. At dinner, Larry and I both knew we would go straight back to his room. We skipped dessert. As soon as the door closed behind us, Larry pulled me close, kissed me, and we were off to the races. We both just took off our clothes. I didn't think about anything except his beautiful body. We were both excited. There was no foreplay. He carried me to his bed and threw me on it, and he had me long and hard. After some time, having experienced numerous climaxes, I felt him reach the finish line. I lost consciousness. He woke me up by kissing me. We moved on to the second round. This continued the next morning. I missed breakfast with the team and barely made it to the meeting. I was sexually satisfied, and I was sure they all knew it, getting a few sideways glances. But there were no direct comments. I thought that one of them might call Marty, but I dismissed the thought. They don't know anything. They just guess. Sex with Larry was the best experience of my life. I think it was a combination of me being away from home and not having to rush home to my family, and his muscular, smooth body. Besides, he seemed to want me as much as I wanted him. He could have had almost any woman, but he was with me. My lust for him was completely irresistible. After a meeting at work, I called him. We went straight to his room, had sex for 2 hours, then ordered room service. Then we did it some more. The morning brought the same sidelong glances. I was a little worried, but I met Larry in his room at 5 in the evening, and we stayed in bed until 8. The sex was still amazing, but it was no longer as mind-blowing as on the first night, or the second one. They brought us food to our room, and then he told me to dress more decently. We'll go dancing. This is what we did. That's how I got on YouTube. I recently watched our video on YouTube, already knowing that Marty had watched it that same evening. I understood what he could see. He would see his loving wife openly, publicly lusting after another man. After finishing the dance, we returned to the hotel and had sex again. The next morning, I had a flight. When I woke up, Larry and I had sex, took inch, and got dressed. I had breakfast in his room. Then she returned to hers to pack her things. My roommate, Cindy, said I was dancing on YouTube and said it was spicy. I was seized with horror, from which I almost died. I realized that I was finished. And then I met Bart Kovacs, Marty's good friend, when we got on the bus to go to the airport. I asked him if Marty had called. While I was in Miami, Marty and I did not contact each other. I didn't check my phone, but it turned out that it called every evening and went to voicemail. Bart told me that Marty had seen me dance on YouTube and that he knew that I spent every night with Larry. I was speechless. The flight home was terrible. Nobody wanted to talk to me. I was sitting by the window and an unfamiliar guy was sitting on the next seat. I knew Larry was on the flight, but I didn't see him. I got off the flight, but I still didn't see Larry, and when I got my luggage, he came up to me and asked if I was going to be okay. I said it would probably never be good again. He looked depressed. I didn't think about the fact that Marty would pick me up, and I stood in line for a taxi. When I got into the taxi, the dispatcher put Larry in it too. We went to places located close to each other. In the taxi, Larry said that he was sorry he did that to YouTube. He just didn't think of it. I said I didn't really want to talk and asked the taxi driver to drop Larry off first. I went home and couldn't get into the house. When Marty opened the door, I saw how devastated and angry he was, and I ran away. Since then, I have lived with my parents. I am in a state of almost complete stupor. I tried to talk to the girls, but Betsy pushed me away, and how could I blame her? We talked on the phone. This was better. It took me an hour to get ready for this. Now I go to consultations. After that first session, I thought my marriage was over, clearly influenced by Marty's explanation of his feelings. Now I can't figure out how to deal with his anger and grief, and I don't understand how I can ask him for trust again. I don't deserve him. And also Larry. He is dead. He was hit by a car. When my mother told me about this, I was so sorry. When we were in a taxi, he asked me to call him. To tell the truth, I could have called, but he is no longer there. Because of this, I feel another emptiness. If I ever had sex with a man again, I was sure I would remember sex with Larry. Only now, maybe not. I can't get rid of the feeling that if I had refused him, he would still be alive. This doesn't make sense, but it does. I'm completely screwed. Marty again. Everything is getting better at home. School was difficult for the twins, but not impossible. Betsy is still angry, and Linda misses her mother. However, I think Betsy too. They use teleconferencing every evening. Lee looks a little better, but it's hard to tell from the short call time. Our second consultation was similar to the first, except that we each had an individual session before the session together. Dr. Price said, "Have you thought about what could make your reconciliation possible?" Yes, but I couldn't think of anything. Sorry. Do you think if you understood why Lee got involved with Larry, you could work on trusting her? If you knew what caused it, and maybe you could figure out how to stop it? This is stupidity. Pardon the expression. I think she just wanted sex with a guy and thought she could do it without consequences. Isn't that what she said? But I didn't believe her. I believed her about lusting after Larry, but I believe she wanted to get caught. Why? Good question. Maybe ask her. Doc, this won't end with our reconciliation anyway. It is impossible to overcome senseless betrayal. Betrayal because she thought she could get away with it cannot be overcome. What if she wanted to be caught somehow? And this could be the worst of all. This would mean that she simply wanted to leave the family, away from me, away from your life. I wanted drama. You know, if Larry were alive, I think she would be with him now. Our session together began and ended with her asking for forgiveness. I didn't buy it. And even if she truly apologized, even if she could truly explain her actions, I couldn't be with her. It's like being next to a time bomb. I asked the lawyer to serve the papers. Lee, today, I was served with divorce papers. I continue to write in this journal because it may lead to some insight in the future. In our consultation this week, I saw that Marty was less angry. He seemed calmer. This was a sign to me that we were done. I've read about this, about the stages of grief. One of the last is acceptance. Marty accepted the fact that we were getting divorced and that my affair was the end of the marriage. The papers didn't surprise me. I'll have to contact a lawyer. In the last week, I have returned to work. The reception at work from colleagues was icy. Everyone knew that I had become a slut who had ruined family life. Even Brady Bean left me, but it's his loss. He could have succeeded. I bet he'll start soon, since he knows I'm a slut. The lawyer said that I should ask for joint custody of the girls. He said that since Marty already owned the house when we got married, he would stay in it. For several years, he was the most important parent of the house. So I could hope the girls would live week by week if I lived in their school area. Or maybe alternating days off. It's all so depressing. I told the lawyer that I was confessing to cheating in Miami and asked him to hurry up the process. I don't need money from Marty. It's obvious that he doesn't want money from me either. Savings should be divided 50-50 without noise and fuss. So many years down the drain and all I have left are fucking memories. But I did better than Larry. I realized that I didn't feel sorry for him. I know that I am no less to blame, but he also has his share in this. He didn't have to have sex with me. He could have anyone. Why me? I'll never know. Dr. Price suggested that my dancing, open sexual behavior, and my complete inability to hide my infidelity might mean that I wanted to start a new, more exciting life, but I believe this is not true. She said Marty thought I wanted to be caught and then be free. Well, now I'm free and I hate it. I have no appetite. No appetite for sex. I don't go to bars. I've turned down Brady Bean multiple times, and I don't even feel tempted. But it would be so simple. I wonder how long this malaise will last. Marty, today the divorce took place. I received primary custody of the twins, who will live in the same house as always. Lee will have them every other weekend, 2 weeks in the summer, and at Thanksgiving or Christmas. I think they will have 2 gifts for each holiday. At Christmas, maybe more. The final settlement was the same as we had been doing for the past 6 months, as Lee had gotten an apartment about 2 miles away. I told Milt and Ellen they could come over any time, and they do often, and I'm sure they see the girls at Lee's on the weekends. I haven't gone on dates. I have a few acquaintances. There are several divorced women who were in our circle of friends, and 3 I went on dates with. I went to dinner or bowling with them. We moved back into the house for a week without the kids, and we are having sex. The sex is usually very good. I believe this applies to all of us, but I made it clear to all 3 that my recent experiences had scarred me, and that there would be no permanence or exclusivity. They all know what happened, everyone in our society knows, so they understand everything. I still think that 2 people think that someday I will overcome my fearfulness. I don't think so. This is a long journey, and there is no reason to believe that it has an end point. The pain I went through, the pure agony of imagining Lee with that idiot, will never leave me. To this day, when I think about it, she is still just as strong, although I try not to think about it. The twins adapted. Linda is good to Lee, but Betsy is not so easy. She holds grudges for a very long time and is very similar to me. Maybe this is very bad. I didn't discuss this with Lee, only with Ellen. Lee and I don't talk much. She knows that I don't want to talk to her. The less I see of her, the better. Seeing her is very painful. It must be avoided. Ellen says she worries about Lee, who has become something of a recluse. I don't often see her on the street, although we communicate in the same group and live not far from each other. I don't sympathize with her and most likely never will. I never understood why she did it, and I believe she probably doesn't understand it either. The best I can do is to chalk it up to a coincidence of events, and unlikely ones at that. Her vague discontent, the opportunity to go to Miami, and most importantly, meeting Larry. Any two of them probably wouldn't have powered it, and then all three happened, and pef, the marriage is ruined. Dead end. Golf course scene. 1 year later. Milt Moore played golf on Saturday. He played in the regular four. However, on this day, one of the group members was replaced by his old school friend. This friend was Fred Cunningham. They have known each other since school. Fred is an electrical engineer. While walking from the 9th platform, they had a personal conversation. They haven't talked about it yet. Of course, not by phone. Milt asked, "How are you coping these days, Fred?" "I'm fine, because I agreed to try it myself." Just followed him all the way from his house. Everything was as you said. He always went to play on a Saturday afternoon if he was in town, and even after he retired he wanted to play. I sympathize with him. I read about it in the Post. I couldn't believe it when he rushed into the street. This was such a big decision for me, and it was accepted so quickly. I just did it. If he hadn't done this, I might not have been able to turn to him. Your horn startled him. But I'm sure you were shocked after that. I know I was. It worked not only perfectly, but even more than perfectly. Marvelous. It's almost as if God intervened to protect Marty. I was certainly shocked to see him die. I called 911 and Marty... Was it Marty? He was right there. Why? I thought, if this works, he should see it for himself, as some kind of closure. He later said he felt cheated. I knew he would kill this guy. Sooner or later, he will do it. He had a gun with him then, and I wanted my granddaughters to have a normal father. Family. I knew that Lee, well, she could do something rash if Marty was arrested, and it would be her fault. But did he deserve to die? Hard to say. But Marty and the girls certainly deserve to live. Lee, too. The two old friends never spoke on this topic again. They walked down the aisle next to each other. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.